Welcome to the Breakfast Club for Fundraising Leaders. My name is still Rob. I still love to help fundraisers and wonderful good causes raise even more money to pay for their wonderful work. Uh, uh, for the last 20 years, my thing has been Bright Spot, and welcome to Breakfast Club. Just checking some buttons here. So if you're just joining us, it always takes a couple of minutes to get everyone in. So welcome. Please do just say hello in the chat. It just creates that sense of solidarity. Uh, we are all remote. Oh my goodness. Um, Hi to Katie Stewart from Koala Northwest. In fact, hello to our various friends who make use of Bright Spot materials in Australia, Christy and Catherine and others. And hello to everyone closer. Hello to Grace and Hannah. Good morning. Anna Shutt. Great to see. Oh, Paola. Hi. Great to see some very familiar names and some people I've not. Oh, Jess Coombs. Hello. Um, some people I've not seen for a while. Hello, Sarah Bowd and Gemma and Belinda. Thank you for saying hello. Hi, Jackie Shannon. Hello, Leanne. Lovely to see you all. Hello, Paul McKenzie and Jenny Jackson. We're going to get started in about a minute's time. It does just take a little while to get everyone in. So please bear with me and I will properly, when everyone's in, introduce the show. Hi, Gemma and Emily and Ian Wilkie. And Joe Payne, great to see you. Oh my goodness, I can't quite keep up with the chat. Forgive me. I'm doing my best. Hi, Edel. I think we're nearly there. By the way, I'm always so grateful if you're able to if you find Breakfast Club helpful, if you ever do a little share on LinkedIn, it makes such a difference because then it means more and more people can make use of these free resources that we work hard to put on. So thank you, as always, to those of you who kindly share this stuff on LinkedIn. Hi, Stephanie. Great to see lots of familiar names. And I think I'm going to make a start. Here we go then. We're starting proper. So, welcome to Breakfast Club for Fundraising Leaders, hosted by me, Rob of Brightspot. I just get really excited on these days. It's quite a lot of work to put these things together, but oh my goodness, it's so wonderful when the day actually happens. I spoke to my colleague Katie yesterday, and she said there were more than 840 people who had registered to join us for Breakfast Club. I know full well that you're all busy, so not everyone will be able to make it live. But I'm expecting we get 300 or 400 people live. So thank you for being part of this wonderful community. Thank you for the solidarity you always show to each other in the chat. And I know some other people will watch it in the follow-up recording as well. So just click these buttons. Lots of familiar faces there, but if you are joining us for the first time, here's the two things I'm trying to do. Apart from this solidarity, this sense of community that we're all, it's not easy, but we're here helping each other, facing similar problems, most of us. Number one, we're going to do our best to share some ideas and techniques that would help you. And two, I'm going to share some techniques that some of which you might want to pass on to your team. I won't be circulating the slides, but I've drafted a blog which sums up a lot of these key ideas we're going to cover. And secondly, we will circulate a recording as well later in the week. So, of course, it's one thing to read a book or go on a course that's got good ideas. It's a whole nother thing to turn that good idea actually into action that raises more money for your good cause. Shelley and I will do our best to make it an interesting session. But please be on the lookout for ideas that you think are worth following up on. They might be different to ours, but my guess is you'll get some ideas. Secondly, one of the most valuable things you could do is to decide in advance to reflect on what you take from the session. Because if you talk through with a colleague or with the team, then it's so much more likely that the one or two most practical things will get implemented. In terms of pragmatic stuff, it's a relatively short session, but we're planning to have a tiny bit of time for Q&A near the end after Shelley's session. So if you have a question, especially for Shelley, then put in the chat the word question in capitals at the beginning of your comment, and we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. In terms of the schedule, we're up and running. Welcome to the show. In a moment, I'm going to do my presentation about some techniques using the psychology of positive influence. And then I'm going to hand over at about 9:25, 9:26 to Shelley from Oxfam, who's very kindly going to come and share some things she's learned about keeping the right kinds of behaviors and habits bubbling away to create a really strong, positive fundraising culture. And we're going to get you away by 5 to 10 UK time. Sorry, I'm conscious there's people from lots of different countries and indeed time zones. By now, like we didn't do this from the very start because in the old days, 11 years ago, Breakfast Club was in person, but for the last 5 years, we've been recording these virtual ones, and most of them are available on YouTube. So if you like this, then just you could an option would be go and look at Bright Spot Fundraising on YouTube. One of our most popular ones we ever did was 2.5 months ago with the ebullient Mr. Ben Swart, who's talking all about picking up the phone and the confidence and the upside of bravely doing that and connecting with our supporters. So that one's there, but also lots of the other classics like with Jumar Johnson about making time to think, and a wonderful one with Leeds Hospital's charity Esther and Mel, all about making your communication really human rather than sort of transactional and formal. Anyway, there's lots there in the YouTube. Lots of you know all about my podcast, my passion project for the last 5.5 years. I've been making these half-hour episode. We're now up to episode 177. At least every couple of weeks, I try to get a new half-hour episode out there. If you're new to it, but you find Breakfast Club helpful, then my top tip, the single most valuable thing I think you could possibly do, is to just go onto your phone, onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and just check out and potentially subscribe to the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. And then, a month's time, 6 months' time, you'll just get these little half-hour bursts of technique, but also hopefully a dose of inspiration to help you keep plugging away doing the kinds of things that raise more money. It's called Fundraising Bright Spots. Do check that out if you like my approach to teaching this stuff. Now, I've said this before, in a way, it's the most important idea of the day. But years ago, I was given various good advice, and a lot of it I didn't implement. The few bits of advice where I did actually try the different or better thing in my fundraising, it was where at some level I genuinely had got a belief that it was worth the effort and worth the relative risk for me, because it had worked for someone else. So that's why my company is Bright Spot. Wherever possible, if you know my work, in my corporate mastery programs and the major gifts one, in my webinars, in my podcast, in my blogs, in all of our team, everything, we work so hard to try and find the real examples to help you get a sense that the technique pays off for this person. It doesn't guarantee it'll pay off for you, but like there's a good chance it might because it worked for these other fundraisers. That's why I do it. The downside is if you're having a bad day or a bad week or even a bad month, by the time I share 4 or 5 of these examples of fundraisers getting wonderful results, I get that it can feel a bit, life's, I wish I had their donors or their, chief exec who's supportive or whatever. I get that it can be hard. I'm certain you're working hard. I'm certain there's a bunch of fundraising you're doing that's great too. So don't allow yourself to be thinking everyone else is finding it easy or rolling in money, and these ideas are in any way designed to sort of make you feel less than. The spirit I offer them in is to try and give you hope and encouragement to keep plugging away doing the good things you're trying to do. Please look after yourself. Okay, then, here we go. I wanted to share 4 particular techniques that I've learned over the last 2 decades that can help you increase the chances that the donor or the supporter or the partner or the foundation will say a very strong yes and want to help and or actually introduce their friends or donate. That's what I'm going to cover. There's loads of things I could include in that, but I've chosen just 4. In a way, the overarching thing is, at the start of my fundraising career, I thought my job was to provide information to people about what my charity does. And I did that. And very often they would say things like, yeah, we'll think about it, or we'll get back to you. And then they never did. I was providing information. Very often, what frustrated me is I was providing the very information they appeared to ask for, or literally asked for. But still, I didn't sense that real sense of conviction that they were going to help. Whereas what I now understand to be the game is not providing information per se, but if I write a proposal, do a pitch, have a conversation with someone who could care about my cause, I think my job is more to transfer certainty from me to them that if they do help and give money, our charity will solve or at least help solve a problem they care about. I've got to transfer that certainty from me to them that our charity thing works. And if you think about it, that's a bit different from giving them the information they appeared to ask for. And it's still not easy, but here are 4 ways I've my courses, I teach 4 of the ways I teach people how to do that in practice. I've only got about 20-25 minutes, so it's going to be really quite brief. The time will go quickly. These ideas are all covered in more depth, among other things, on my masterclasses. So what I've done for the last couple of years is once a year, a one day session, not as part of my big corporate or 6-month programs. It's just a one-off, one-day thing. The one on the 24th of June is on influencing donors and supporters, as in, if you ever do get a chance to have these conversations and or choose the right messaging, what messages, what things could you say and how could you say it that increases the chances that you get a yes? And the one on the 10th of July is similar, but it's all about when your medium for persuading or inspiring is the written form, be it proposals or stewardship or application forms. So what I'm about to cover comes from those 2 courses. But I hope this today will work as a standalone and I'll be able to help. What's the pitfall? What's the big enemy? I think there's lots of things that make it difficult to bring to life the difference your charity makes. But if I were to sum up a major one, not the only one, but a major one, I would say it's the so-called curse of knowledge. Said differently, if you've worked for your charity for more than 3 weeks, various things will have happened unconsciously without you doing anything different that make it actually, in a way, harder to bring your cause to life than before you got there. My 4 principles are various ways to handle the difficulties that the curse of knowledge throws up. The first one's really kind of obvious. I bet most of you could guess this if you had it. Kind of, if you worked in the charity for a while, what's a risk that can happen? I would say it's this. If we're not careful, communication by a charity or by a fundraiser can be in a tone of language that's not quite the way people outside the charity talk about this issue. And if you're thinking Rob's talking about jargon, charity jargon, social worker jargon, academic jargon, or whatever, I am to an extent talking about that. But beware, the curse of knowledge is pernicious and sneaky. If you've been there for a year or 2, you probably still see some bits of jargon in your colleagues' reports, and you say, well, we can't say that to the donor, but what does it even mean? you spot some of those, but beware. If you've been there for a while, more than a month, there's a really good chance that some of them are sneaking under your radar, because what I've now realized is it's not binary. It's not either charity jargon or everyday language, the way people talk in their living rooms. It's not one or the other. There's actually a spectrum of language. That's how I now see it. And what I found is that, well, basically, if you work there for a while, there's some phrases that feel normal to you now, and you've got to be on the lookout for them. To give you a sense of what I mean, I was explaining this a couple of years ago, and someone at the beginning of my course, I think she was having a bad day, but she just had a little rant about um, why is it that our charities talk in such jargon? There's just too much jargon in charities. And to an extent, she was right. Although, actually, in a charity, you need some objective or more formal language for there's an upside to it internally. But anyway, she was upset by it. What I found interesting was not an hour later on the course, she proudly told the rest of the room on my course about the things that her charity does to combat social isolation. And I saw a level of irony in this, and I sort of gave her a little double take, but she appeared not to see any irony at all. Well, we do services which combat social isolation, Rob. Um, and if you're thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Well, can we know what you mean, Rob? That is the problem, isn't it? Because my point to her was, would my elderly mum in lockdown have said to me or someone else in the family, do you know, I just wish someone would come along and combat my social isolation? I don't think she would. She probably would have talked about how really bitterly lonely she is, or similar. And if you can hear the difference between those two, that's the curse of knowledge doing that. And you might say, well, what does it matter? We know what you mean. Well, actually, if you use, I think almost all of the causes represented in our Breakfast Club now have a phrase or phrases equivalent to combat social isolation. And if you're not careful, the curse of knowledge causes too many of those to get into your proposals and the way you talk about your cause. And the risk is, at some level, it's not as effortlessly meaningful in the brain of the person you talk to than if you talk about bitter loneliness in more concrete everyday language. To give you a sense of this, there's a wonderful fundraiser called Laura who's on one of our programs at the moment, and this was literally 2 weeks ago, and she shared. I just really well, I'll do my best to paraphrase what she told me, but she told our group a couple of weeks ago, because she works for a wonderful community charity in a particular town in England, and what they do lots of things, but one of the things they do is cookery classes, in particular cookery classes for older men, many of whom live on their own, and many of them are not at all confident or skillful at cooking. And she said, but this particular gentleman, while they were chopping the vegetables, because they were making a stew with the teacher, while they were chopping the carrots, I mean, it wasn't a bad cut. He just nicked himself with the knife while he was cutting the carrots. And it turned out, and you might not believe this, but because I was astonished as well, it turned out he literally never chopped vegetables in his life. Um, and for many years, I'm guessing possibly since his partner died, he'd lived almost entirely on microwave meals and other processed food. And anyway, he carried on learning how to chop vegetables. They made a stew together, him and the other gentleman. They ate this delicious stew together. They had that sense of camaraderie with each other. I really like this bit. They took batches of the stew home, so they'd have more nutritious food for the rest of the week. It's a wonderful course. The bit that I liked about the story was 2 or 3 weeks after this particular event, Laura, who shared the story, she said that the same guy just dropped in at the community charity with a batch of extra homemade curries that he himself had made using a recipe book that he'd got out for the first time ever from the library. And she said it was delicious. And in that moment, Laura and the rest of the room got a strong sense that these cookery classes do work, not only in terms of good habits and nutrition, but also in terms of helping people be less lonely and get more connection and make friends. So I've done my best to share that example that Laura told so eloquently on my course the other day. Um, if the curse of knowledge can cause us sometimes in our fundraising to talk in a tone of language which just isn't quite the way normal people talk, one thing you can do, and it takes a little extra effort and sometimes a tiny bit more skill, is to find real examples that bring to life the difference that you make. Um, that is something we teach you how to do on our upcoming masterclass. But also, even before that, it's just registering in your brain to talk more in the tone of language, even if not in story, in more concrete terms like loneliness rather than social isolation. On to the next point. Um, I found this interesting. Several years ago, there was an entrepreneur in America, and his fast food restaurant was called A&W, and he wanted to create a rival burger to the McDonald's Quarter Pounder. He wanted a bigger, meatier burger, and rather than the Quarter Pounder, he was going to create the um, Third Pounder. Now, have a little think. What could go wrong when you try to market and persuade the customers about your new type of burger? It's the Third Pounder. Do you any idea what might go wrong? What went wrong apparently is lots of people were cross and complained that they were being cheated and being sold a smaller burger. Now, of course, I would never do that, and you would never get your fractions wrong. But this was not a small effect. Lots of people hated the idea of a third pounder because, well, three is smaller than four, isn't it? So it must be a smaller burger. Now, beware being too smug about how good you are at maths and fractions. Um, Also, beware of the headline there. It says in the World News and Herald, confused, but the burgers are flop because confused Americans can't do the maths. Beware. It should say confused humans can't do the math. I believe a similar effect would have happened in any country in the world. Why? Because in this excellent book by Chip Heath and Carla Starr, they say that we really overestimate, almost all of us in our communication overestimate how meaningful numbers are as a concept when we say or write them. It's just not, they need translating as if you'd said a Japanese word, or at least like a word that's slightly foreign. So human beings don't genuinely think instinctively in fractions. Many of us could work out the difference between a third and a quarter, but it takes brain effort, and the human brain is a miser. Many of us don't even, initially, I think many of you won't believe me that this is true, but we don't even think in percentages. Like the true power and meaning of a percentage is not even as strong as most of us think, the way our charities trot out these percentages about the scale of the problem and so on. If you look at the book cover there, there's a picture of a ruler. If you look at the ruler, can you see what it says? The numbers go one from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, lots and lots and lots and lots. And what they're saying is, for most of human history, most cultures in the world have only had a number in their language for numbers 1 to 5, and numbers beyond 6 for most of human history. Anthropologists tell us that there hasn't been a number for 6, 7, 8, 9. And if you try and pick, I bet you can broadly picture 4 or 5 lemons, but can you picture what 6 or 7 lemons looks like? I can't. And what we're getting to is that at a really fundamental neuroscience level, numbers are less meaningful and compelling and persuasive than most of our charities behave as if they are. So it's not a natural language. On my courses, I use techniques from this book to show you how to always translate them as often as you can, rather than give a number and expect anyone to genuinely feel and get the power of that drama or that story or that injustice behind the number. Um, One of the ones I found interesting in the book was to do with gender inequality. And unfortunately, it's not news to any of you. I don't think that there's a long way to go in the journey towards gender equality. Nevertheless, I found this an interesting way of describing this and bringing it to life. It goes like this. In 2021, among the Fortune 500 chief executives in the US, there were more men called James than there were women. Which means if you went along to a big business event, there'd be a greater and you were like, oh, who's going to be on the speaker panel today of these chief execs? Be a greater chance that someone could be called James than they would be a woman. Now you probably don't thank me for in these troubled times, these unfair times on a Tuesday morning, me making you feel worse at how dreadful yet another thing is in the world. But if at some level that's a deeply troubling and annoying, worrying state of affairs, I think it would have been less of an emotional gut punch if we had, can you see, if we had just told the stat of how many women were chief execs out of that Fortune 500 compared to this different way the author of this book brought to life this inequality. So, point one, and I haven't got time to go give lots of the detail of the techniques, but point one, any number in your charity proposal, or your colleagues got these favorite numbers about the scale of the problem or how many people we helped or whatever, never ever ever assume that just sharing the number means people will feel what it means. So always the default advice, try to put in context what that means, like what that relationship between those two numbers might be. Well, I think of it this way. What I mean by that is, in terms of the techniques, I've got time to just share you one of the techniques now. There's a wonderful fundraiser called Bella. And when she came on our course, she worked for Parkrun. I think she might still be there. Anyway, Bella really liked these ideas and she applied them immediately because part of her job looking after these corporate partners for Parkrun was each month to share some, sort of impact numbers, impact data that bring the cause to life about how many people they're reaching. And until she learned these ideas, her default way of doing it was to talk about, for instance, the 11,000 new registrations for Parkrun per week, or the 4.6 million people who are registered in the UK. I wonder if you can have a think. I'm sorry, I don't have time to really look at the chat and let you do it, but I bet some of you would have an instinct as to how we could bring that to life. And what she did was, rather than 11,000 new registrations per week, she divided it down, and that yellow stopwatch, what she now sent to her corporate partner was every 55 seconds in the UK, someone signs up for Parkrun. And then she also realized that saying it this way gave her the opportunity to save the relationship in terms of progress. Last year, it was one every 76 seconds, but now it's one every 55 seconds. She said the corporate partner absolutely loved the way this number was brought to life compared to talking about 11,000. And again, this idea of bigism, whereby the human brain, including charities, go to presume people should be impressed by a big number like 4.6 million, whereas again, just I don't take it for granted. If you weigh up, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But for me, thinking of one person in 14 in the UK being signed up to Parkrun is just somehow more powerful in me getting my head around this stuff compared to the notion of 4.6 million. So weigh it up. Can you feel the difference between these two? This particular technique is overcoming bigism. So rather than a big number left on its own to persuade or kind of help people be angry at the state of affairs, actually you reduce it down. So there was a brilliant fundraiser called Lizzie on this influencing donors and supporters course this time last year. She learned this idea, she liked it. 2 months after, she sent me a message because she had been nominated, or her small charity was nominated to be in a charity of the year. But you know, these ones, they literally said, you've only got 100 words. We're going to circulate the 100 words to our employees, and then they're going to choose, compared to some other charities. Lizzie said where normally she'd talk about the 1,100 referrals per year for these children in this situation who we help. I wonder if you can guess, based on Bella's example, how she might try to make that more meaningful for our heads to get around. What she instead did was she started her 100 word proposal with this. Not 1,100 referrals, but every 8 hours in the UK, a vulnerable child desperately in need of help is referred to us. Can you feel the difference between those two? Oh, well done, Lizzie. She won this partnership. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was worth more than £10,000, which is a lot for her relatively small charity. Can Lizzie or I guarantee that the only thing that won it was this shift in overcoming bigism? No, but Lizzie definitely felt it was a significant enough thing that she won it to specifically get in touch with me 2 months after the course to let me know that she'd won. And she was really pleased that she'd said it this way because it felt more persuasive and compelling to her. So there's so much more on that topic, but I hope already I've given you a sense of it. If you never have a budget to ever come on the course, maybe just buy the book, Making Numbers Count. Making Numbers Count. There's lots of good stuff in there that you can find to help you. Idea 3. There can be too many messages. Surprise, surprise, because of the curse of knowledge if you work there. And one of the surprise, the antidote to this is be absolutely disciplined in focusing on fewer messages than most people do in a pitch or in a proposal. Those of you who like my podcast probably heard episode 174 recently with the brilliant Katie Hillett. The story is, briefly, a couple of her colleagues from Refuge came on our corporate mastery training last year. And then this year, Katie and they were using these techniques, and well done them. They got the chance to pitch for 3 massive partnerships, and they won all 3 of those pitches. Amazing. 2 of them are worth $1 million or more. There's several things they did to achieve these extraordinary results, but Katie explains them in the podcast. But if you want just one of them, I would say one of them is this key thing I'm talking about now. In most pitches, people try and say 6, 7, 8 important things, and it's all quite shallow and surface level because there isn't time to go in depth on any of them. Katie did wonderful insight. They found out the 3 key things that would cause that partner to potentially choose them this day. And the strongest bit that I love on the podcast is when Katie says, we just kept taking things out. So we were just left doing the whole pitch like a golden thread. The whole pitch was these 3 key ideas that potentially would inspire them to choose us for their reasons to do the right thing. And it's not easy doing that, but they did this golden thread technique on the course. Again, I give you more depth as to how to do that in practice because it's not easy, but definitely it is effective if you're A, determined to find the insight, what are the 2 or 3 things, and then B, be much more ruthless than most charities manage to be in just sticking to the 2 or 3 key points. 4th pitfall, in a given proposal, we tend to expect more of the proposal than is possible from a piece of written communication. So we're sort of jumping to the end, the £1 million gift or the £10,000 gift, and thinking one proposal can do enough to get that. Is it true that some proposals, it's the only chance you'll ever get to inspire someone to want to donate to you? Yes, that's true of some, but I believe very many of them actually, they're really in a way just a stepping stone. They're a next step in the journey, building a relationship. And to get a really big partnership or gift, you're probably going to need at least another conversation at some point. So we make too big a leap as to in terms of our messaging, and we jump to the end of the game. To give you a sense of what I mean, I know a couple of you have heard this story before, but it really inspires me still. Jade came on our corporate mastery program 18 months ago. At our masterclass this time last year, she came and shared this wonderful story. At the beginning of the course, she had decided that Hush Puppies would make a wonderful potential partner for her charity Dogs Trust. Great. The only problem was Hush Puppies didn't know anything about that. They didn't have any Charity of the Year thing in particular. They certainly weren't laying awake at night waiting for a call from Jade of Dogs Trust. How could Jade sort of get from there to a partnership? Well, in particular, she made use of this strategic, calm, clear, specific thinking mindset that I teach on the writing course. Who is my reader? Well, they're Hush Puppies and these kinds of people who work for this shoe company. Crucially, what do I want them to do? At that point, many people write, well, donate £10,000 or a partnership. I want them to give us a partnership. No. Crucially, if you know my work well, you'll be shouting at your computer, no, it's a coffee. It's a quote. Rob always bangs on about test drives. Jade was really clear. What should my written communication do? It should inspire for them to eagerly get in touch with me. And then what they did. So then what message would do that? Well, the message that would inspire them to want to meet me is that it could be a wonderful partnership that their customers would love, but really they're eager to meet me. Long story short, how did she get them eagerly wanting to meet her with that message? She bought a pair of the shoes. She sent them to her colleague who looks after the dogs, who hosted a sort of a quote unboxing ceremony between Bertie the Basset Hound at Dogs Trust playing with the shoes. Look how well these brands go together. Our stories go together. She sent these photos to the marketing director at Hush Puppies. Guess what? They emailed straight back, and or the chief executive rather. They were really keen to meet, which is what her intention was. They had a good chat. Then they even arranged also a meeting to see where the good work gets done. They negotiated the details. And well done, Jade. Well done, Dogs Trust. Well done, Hush Puppies. A partnership worth £23,000. There's lots of cool stuff about how she did this, but I think none of it would have happened if her first piece of communication was trying to ask for a partnership. It wasn't. It was to inspire the person enough to want to meet her. And that's a level of strategic thinking before you even start writing, which is not easy or obvious, I found, to many fundraisers, but we show you how to do it. So plan to inspire one step at a time. I'm just going to, not all of your proposals need that level of creativity, but many pieces of written communication benefit from this strategic thinking. What's the next step? As the person reads this bit of paper, and getting clearer on that makes all the difference. So to sum up, if at all possible, use more everyday language when you're talking to your potential supporters, and even real examples often can help. Translate numbers as often as you can. Don't take for granted people feel what they mean. Far fewer messages than we usually choose for any given proposal or conversation or pitch, and just thinking strategically one step at a time. Apart from anything else, it allows you to write a lot less than you would have done. That was a whistle stop tour. If you want some of those stories in more depth and loads more, then check out Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. I really hope, if nothing else, you just start accessing some of that free content. A few of you, if you and this won't work for our friends in South Africa or Melbourne or all the rest of it, but if you're in the UK and you could get to London late June or early July, like I said, and you want to go into much more depth, then we would love to see you there. Rather than loads of information about the courses, all I would say is, if you come to these breakfast clubs and you lift with a couple of good ideas and at some level a little bit of encouragement and increased mojo, like last time, lots of people were picking up the phone after Ben's session. If we give you a lift through the breakfast clubs, or if my podcast helps you, then I guarantee a whole day of this kind of stuff with me, with a couple of my coaches, with other positive fundraisers, just playing with it and asking the questions. It's a whole different level of effect on your fundraising confidence and skill compared to these bite-sized ones we're able to do in this way. If you've been meaning to do it for a while, my last little nudge would be, if you get a place on the influencing donors course today, it's still at the early bird, so it's 250 plus VAT. If you book tomorrow, it's still 250, but from 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon UK time, it goes up to the normal price, which is 350 plus VAT. So if you're thinking about it, please, if this is not for you, that's fine. But if you're thinking about it, please save yourself the £100 and do it today or at latest tomorrow. The writing one, the early bird, is good for another week or two, I think. For some of you, this is you know, just one open day like that isn't for you, but you might, if you work in a team, we can do either of those two topics as a team day and make it bespoke. So if Katie could put a link to those two masterclasses, but also to our form in the chat, please. Do just fill in the form with your email address and so on. We'll get in touch and set up a quick chat, either about team training or about our famous 6-month high value programs, which many of you know all about anyway. Okay, I'm going to pause and take a deep breath. It's my huge pleasure to just take my slides away. It's my huge pleasure. If Shelley, if you want to find your slides and bring those up. So I met Shelley a couple of months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. My colleague Ben came and did a session with Shelley's team at Oxfam, or a couple of sessions, I think, last year. And what I asked Shelley to do is yes, she's going to include a few of these little tips and techniques, a bit like what I've done, but in a way as useful, or frankly more useful. It isn't even that. It's what some things that Shelley and her colleagues have been doing in order to keep the good ideas going. I think, at the risk of me using my own jargon at you, if you've ever read a good book or been to a conference or talked to an inspiring colleague or been on a course or listened to a podcast and you've got a good idea and you think we really should do this every week, or this could really help our fundraising, and then over time it's sort of faded down and it lost its power. They call that apparently the Ebbinghaus effect. And I know many of you have got good techniques as leaders for keeping these good ideas going, but I really liked some of the things that Shelley and her colleagues have been doing to keep some of the good stuff going in their culture ever since the training that Brightspot did for her last year. So without more ado, it's my huge pleasure to welcome Shelley, who is head of the new partnerships team at Oxfam. She's going to share some of those ideas. Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Rob. And now I've sat through your bit, I'm thinking, oh, am I doing jargon? Am I doing this? So hopefully how I run through my presentation will be helpful for everybody. So thank you very much. Morning to everybody. And a huge thank you to Rob and to Ben for inviting me to come along today. So as you'll see in kind of the title, I'm going to talk a bit about how we've embedded our training into our day-to-day work. And within that, I'll be talking about kind of the techniques we've used as a team to focus, to build our foundations, and also work on gaining new relationships with our donors. So as Rob said, I am head of new partnerships at Oxfam GB. And we've actually had 2 full-day training courses with Ben. So both the courses that Rob was talking about earlier that you can join, Ben came and did those for us and our colleagues at Oxfam. So my role is I head up the new partnerships team. So I look after, my team looks after rather the UK and Switzerland, and then our wider team work with existing donors as well. Now, I'm very aware, so kind of elephant in the room, that Oxfam GB is a really big brand. It's well known, it's an international sort of NGO, and we can be seen to have resources, awareness, and in some ways, it might be the perception that that makes life really easy. And don't get me wrong, in some ways, it absolutely does. But I wanted to kind of address that because when I joined 2 years ago, we didn't have strong foundations in the new partnerships team. So my team solely focuses on brand new funding relationships, and we didn't have methods of prospecting. So in lots of ways, we have had to start from scratch in our team. And before I worked at Oxfam, I actually worked at a very, very small charity called Dreams Come True, which I expect a number of you on this call don't know who they are. I certainly know Emma does, because I saw that she joined and she was one of my colleagues from Dreams. So morning, Emma. But at Dreams Come True, it was a really small charity. And having worked in big and small charities, I really hope that what I do share with you today will be useful, whatever size charity you work for. Because ultimately, I feel wherever you work, it's the culture and the leadership that build those strong foundations to achieve your goals. And even more importantly today, I'm not sitting here talking to you about high value partnerships, huge success stories, multi-year wins. I'm just talking about really little habits that me and my team have taken from our training, from breakfast clubs, from podcasts with Bright Spot. And we've made a difference across our whole team. So it's not the big wins yet, but I'm hoping that because it's lots of these little habits, they will be useful for lots and lots of you that are on the call today. So I'm going to talk about kind of a tactic, how I've led with that, and the impact that has on our culture. So I'm going to run through 4 examples and then share some top tips at the end as well. And just highlighted in green on each slide, so you understand why she put this garish green at me. That is the bit that I feel is kind of the leadership and culture element of the tactic that I'm sharing. So the first one is storytelling. So Rob's spoken about it a little bit already this morning, and we did the training day that focused predominantly on storytelling. And really, the thing that can happen is we get really, really excited when we're in our training sessions. And, you know, I saw it even in the chat today. This is amazing. I want to use this. We could do this more. But the next bit of actually coming back and putting it into practice can be difficult, or we do it and then we lapse with it, and it doesn't become a habit. So what we've done is managed to bring things back and embed it into our culture in our team. So the storytelling sessions, we really focus on the magic formula as a team. And what I made a commitment to do was run a storytelling session every 6 to 8 weeks with my team and the wider team. And that is either virtually or in person. And what this does is allows us to put through videos, blogs, news articles, emails through the magic formula. So we break off and do that separately, and then we come together and we talk about what examples we've put through the magic formula to ultimately then be able to bring, you know, the story of our partners, our programs, our participants to life. And this allows us to be kind of bring it to life really directly, really respectfully, and kind of represent everybody really well. So some really good examples have been that I had a really difficult meeting that I had to prepare for. It was with a trust that was no longer working with us. They actually only worked specifically in 2 countries. One of those countries we'd phased out of. So I already knew it was a tougher meeting to prepare for. What I wanted to do was captivate them with the work that we were doing, and the country we were working in that they were interested in was in Ghana. So I found an amazing climate resilience project in Ghana, and I put that project through the magic formula. So I was able to bring that story to life in my meeting. So we use it a lot in meeting preparation, as well as in the written word as well. And what this allowed me to do was sit in front of 2 of the trustees who weren't sure about working with Oxfam anymore. And I was able to show them the impact we were having in Ghana. But one of the things that was really important to me was that this trust wasn't necessarily working the way we did, and it didn't necessarily align with us. I wanted to make it really clear how we worked in Ghana with our partners, that we were a partner-led organisation, and they were talking to us about the support that they needed. And I was able to bring that to life in this story. And although it didn't result in funding initially, it did mend the relationship. It did show them the amazing work that we were doing in Ghana. And if they do come back to work with us in the future, they know we are a partner-led organisation. And that was very important for me to bring across in this storytelling that we'd done through the magic formula. And then another example from my team was a project in Kenya. It was really focused on LGBTQ plus work, and we had a foundation that we wanted to reach out to that was very focused on equal rights. So my colleague was able to put the story of one of our programs through the magic formula into an email and secure a meeting with that foundation by bringing the project to life. And then another tactic that we have inputted, and it's very well timed because Rob spoke about numbers this morning, is our numbers and natter. So this isn't run by me, this is run by the amazing Becca in my team. She runs that every 8 weeks. And the idea is one morning you come and have a natter about numbers. And very similar to the storytelling session, she'll have maybe a proposal, it might be a document, an email, a blog with some numbers in it. And you will then look at that as a team separately and come back together and change those numbers. And like in the examples Rob gave earlier, you'll come up with different suggestions of how the numbers could be presented better, more eye-catching, and in the simpler form. And the success, just one success of this has been putting a very clear number in an email subject to a foundation, and that receiving a reply that we hadn't had before. So both of those tactics are something that we've taken from the training session. We know that they're going to make a huge impact in our work. So we've committed to a habit that then is happening really, really regularly, and flexing that muscle of storytelling and that kind of ability to look at a number and know to change it and simplify it if we see it. So they're two of our first great examples in our team. The next is called Focus Funders, and this was from it was from a breakfast club, I think, and also from a podcast. It may not have been called Focus Funders. That's what we've decided to call it in our team. But this ultimately is about focusing on our prospects, our top 8 to 10 prospects. When I first joined the team, we were very scattergun in how we prospected, and it was about getting more kind of clear with our goals with our prospects. So we put in a ranking system to look at the highest ranking prospects were the ones we focused on. So that might be how they align with us, the access that we have, the value, do they have multi-year potential? So we would rank them, and then the highest rank foundations to work with us became these top focus funders. Now, we really loved the 80-20 example, but for us, we actually do 70-15-15. So 70% of our time is spent on these 8 to 10 focus funders. So that's the UK and Switzerland having their own. And we know when we spend 70% of our time on these focused funders, we're more likely to get success. And that might be little success, like replying to emails or a coffee, or getting hopefully to the point of that concept note and funding. So you can see here, again, the green highlights kind of the leadership culture element. So having a vast majority of our time focused on it and allowing the team to set that boundary, but also having boundaries across the Confederation. So that's across all of the Oxfams worldwide. And I'll talk about that a bit more in the successes. So by having this focus, one of the successes that I was prospecting a funder, I still am prospecting said funder for a project in Nepal. And one of my colleagues who works on Switzerland also had a prospect that might work nicely for this project in Nepal. So she asked me if I would ask my contact about an introduction. And I won't lie, at first I was a bit like, oh, I'm in the middle of my prospecting, is now the time? But we had a really good conversation about it. And I decided to ask my contact, would they introduce us to this other foundation? Within 24 hours, they'd introduced us. So it clearly was never an issue, and I should have not worried so much about it, but that is the way that we are. And we were then introduced to this other foundation. And from that, we got 2 meetings, one a very technical program related meeting and one a funding meeting. So it was really great that my colleague always had her focus funders in her mind's eye when talking to me and could say this introduction would be really great. And then the boundaries for prospecting to me is also really important. So I said that before we were quite scattergun, and what we do have by being a big charity is lots of people come to us and ask us about the UK funders or the Swiss funders, or this is a project I really need a funder for, and it can pull you away from where you need to be focused. So these boundaries allow us to have those conversations. So if people come to us, we're able to say, these are the foundations I'm focusing on right now. And it doesn't mean we won't look at something. It doesn't mean we won't research it or see if it aligns. But if it doesn't align like these do, this is where we're focusing our time. And that gives autonomy to my team as well, to be able to say, these are my boundaries, and I'm not working on that right now. So this has been really successful already in our team, but it also gives us that real focus, which is a really great way to work. And then the last kind of big tactic I will share with you is around the philosophies. So this was a podcast with Grace Cannings from what was Parkinson's UK. I think it might have changed now. But she spoke with Rob about setting philosophies as a team. And I thought, I love this. We have a really great culture in our team, but I knew we could be better. And I knew we could give a little bit more permission to each other. So what these philosophies do is allow for consistency, but they also give permission that we don't need to keep asking each other, can we do these things? So we took this idea to a team meeting, which we often do with a lot of our training. And we did a 30-minute quick brainstorm to set what our philosophies would be in our philanthropy and partnerships team. And these are the principles that we live by now. So I made it on the lovely Canva, and we've got it that it can be a wallpaper on your computer, it can go on your notice board, and you can see, I apologize because the picture's a little bit blurry, but we've got things from stories, so the storytelling element, to the kind of record your data, so if it's not on Salesforce, it didn't happen, right up to kind of find the joy, make space for fun, and the good old Jerry Springer, look after yourself and each other. So a real mix of kind of work and well-being. But I truly believe that probably the biggest success is our well-being culture, that we do feel we have that permission to take time away if we need to allow space to think and find the joy and share it with each other. And as a team, we actually have a team chat, obviously, for all the work stuff, but we have a team fun chat, which is, look at my amazing view on my walk at lunchtime. Here's my doggy while I've gone to take a break. And we really have that really great balance. So these philosophies allow us to have that. And I've really liked taking that away from that podcast. So they're kind of the chunkier tactics that when doing the training, we all were really excited by them, or listening to the podcast. But what I've done is taken that approach to lead and say, this is how we're going to keep implementing it, make it a habit, and really embed it into our culture within the philanthropy team at Oxfam. So there were loads of other things that I wanted to share, and we just don't have enough time. So what I wanted to do was just share a couple of top tips of the extra things that we've brought back from training or listening to the podcast and the breakfast clubs. So Rob's already talked about it today, the picking up the phone. So instead of replying to an email, just picking up the phone and answering a question. That works really nicely, especially if it's a difficult question. Photo captions. So I love Canva. And we use that a lot for our proposals. So the written word, our stories, our numbers. But instead of captions on the photo of just describing it, we pull out the most amazing quote and put that with the picture, and it works really nicely. I'm going to be in London on X date or next Wednesday. Even if it doesn't result in a meeting, it often results in a reply. Oh, I'm not around, but I will be on this date, or maybe let me know next time. Had a really recent discussion with Ben about how there's a lot of emergencies and crises that we respond to at Oxfam, and it can be very difficult to decide, do we let everybody know about everything? And Ben gave us a tip which has worked really well, which was a bit of an FYI. So you will have seen this. This is how Oxfam is responding. There's no ask. It's just letting people know we are responding. And for both me and my colleague in Switzerland, we got responses to those emails to foundations who had never responded to us before. Becca in my team loves to end her meetings with outside work interests, but what's amazing about it is she remembers. And then she'll bring it up next time she sees them, or in an email, or might even send them something relevant to that interest that actually has nothing to do with the work piece that we're talking about. And another thing we took back to a team meeting from a breakfast club was the prep and the big think time, and giving that permission, which actually I think we might add that to our philosophies, is there's permission for this big think time. Go away and take it. Block out time either side of your meetings to prepare and kind of decompress afterwards. So it's just been really important for me to bring that training back to the team and really embed it into our habits and our culture. And Rob said to me, Shelley, this is that salt shaker theory. So I wanted to just share that as I wrap up today, that the way that we have used the training and I've tried to lead my team and our culture is always bringing that salt shaker back to the middle of the table. And if you haven't heard of that before, it's a philosophy coined by Danny Mayer, who was the founder of Shake Shack. And it's about setting clear expectations, providing gentle guidance, but also trusting your team to excel. So it's always bringing the salt shaker back to the middle of the table. So we've done that by our storytelling, flexing that muscle, bringing our programs and our partners to the heart of what we do, and doing our programs justice. So, not overcomplicating it, doing the simple numbers, the simple written word. It's been setting our boundaries for our work. So, what are we working on, and setting our boundaries externally, but also giving our teams autonomy for their own work too. And he talks about effective leadership requires that patience and that consistency. So, just like the waiter who keeps coming back and putting your salt shaker back in the middle of the table, that's what we need to do as leaders. Be prepared to offer that ongoing support and encouragement, but keep bringing us back to that focus in the middle. And what that does is cultivate that culture of excellence, but also it empowers everybody to reach their full potential. So I'm super grateful to Rob and Ben. They've brought so many tools to us, but then I'm so grateful to my team who have embraced it. I've tried to lead them, and they've really kind of grabbed that with both hands. And the result of that has been an amazing culture, all these little habits and little results. And I know that that consistency will pay off big time in the next couple of years. And maybe one day I'll get invited back to do the big win and the big multi-year. But today I wanted to share that it's the little habits that count as well. So thank you very much for giving me the space and time. Hopefully I didn't talk too quickly, and that was beneficial. And there were bits for all of you in there somewhere. So thank you so much, Rob.
Wow. That's so helpful, Shelley, as I hope maybe in a moment you'll be able to see from the chat just how helpful people are finding it. Thank you ever so much for putting in time to come and share some of these things that have been working for you.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
yeah, I absolutely think maybe a few things just are a bit different from a larger organization, but I really think the most of them are absolutely true. Whether the challenge is still there, if you're a team of one or a team of 20, the need to somehow keep nudging oneself or others to be more likely to do this thing than that thing on any given day on a busy, stressful day of fundraising, I think is true for all of us. So I've just got a couple of new ideas from what you've said there. So thank you. We've got a few minutes, literally not many, so I'm sorry we won't cover loads of questions, but if people have got questions, please put them in the chat and I'll try and come to a couple. Just while I'm from ones I was seeing before. Yes, sometimes in Breakfast Club, in fact, I was planning to, and in fact, told Shelley originally I was going to do a little bit explaining what I call my magic formula. In the end, I just focused more on story pure rather than this magic formula. But in answer to some reasonable questions in the chat, when Shelley and I talk about the magic formula, basically it's a system I invented which you could apply to any charitable cause on the planet to help you find your most persuasive ways of bringing to life A, how tough the problem is, and B, the amazing difference our charity works. I call it, perhaps slightly grandly, over grandly, the magic formula, but I genuinely call it that because of just what a difference it makes to any cause, however hard you find to bring it to life. It has this really powerful, almost magic feeling effect. You don't need to come on my courses to learn it. We put in episode 90 of my podcast. Ben and I talk through broadly what the concept is and some examples. So scroll back through in the podcast, episode 90, if you want a quick go for free. For the princely sum of £10, if you wanted to invest, you could get my book, The Fundraiser Who Wanted More, now in its 10th year. We got the anniversary coming up very soon. In my book, The Fundraiser Who Wanted More, which is on Amazon, I spend 2 or 3 chapters explaining it and giving examples for how to use that magic formula. So you don't need to buy Bright Spot training in order to get this thing that Shelley was saying has been so helpful for. Obviously, if you come on the course, we can really help you unpack it and apply it. But that's an answer to that one, and hopefully some top tips. Someone was saying, oh, great question. Forgive me. In fact, I think I'm just going to come straight to see if there are there's too many, so much lovely comments. Maybe you've already seen a question in there. Let me
Yeah.
go
Do you want
ahead.
me? I
Yeah,
can
yeah, go
see.
ahead. If
So
you're ahead of me, go ahead, Shelley.
there were two that I just kind of quickly saw. One person said, if you would look at one thing that's making a difference, what is it? That's really hard because obviously I've shared loads, but I think it's the looking at pieces of writing and how to make it more simple, the golden thread, the simple numbers. That would probably be the kind of thing that has the biggest impact on the most things, because you can apply that to a long proposal or a very short email. So that would be my answer to Paul. I don't know if it's Paul or Paula because it's cut off your name. And then another one was when you say run things through the magic formula. So there's me, see, look, doing the jargon on my own speak. So the magic formula has two sides to it. And like Rob said, you'd be able to have a look at it. What we do is get a video, a blog, a newsletter. It will be different for each session. And sometimes it's multiple resources. But what we do is then break out and look at the resource we've got against the magic formula and make notes. So it will be, there's a bit on numbers, there's a bit on how do you bring like the story, so quotes. There'll be a bit on what's obvious about the problem, what's not obvious about the problem. And we pull those bits out of the resource that we've got. And then we come back together as a team and say, what did you find for this? What did you find for that? What numbers did you pull out? What was the story that you pulled out? And then as a team, we've then kind of put something through the magic formula. That's kind of hopefully how I have kind of explained it. So they were two that I saw that I pulled out, that hopefully that's useful. But my email address, it was on that slide. I'll pop it in the chat. If anybody wants to email me and ask me anything or grab 10 minutes and have a virtual coffee, I'm always happy to chat.
Thank you. Just last couple of things. Yes, people are asking, will this be available? Yeah, I'm going to circulate a blog summarizing the key things Shelley and I have talked about. That'll be on LinkedIn later. And later in the week, we'll also send out the blog and a recording of this film so you can watch it again or watch it with your team. And slow down on the bits if you want to go and pause and just think about how could we apply that anti-bigism, reduce it down technique, for instance. And quick question from Helene. Question: what do you think about language like almost all or nearly everyone, as opposed to, for example, 85%? Generally, that's the right idea, but one of the key techniques for translating percentages into something that's more meaningful for most people's brains is to have a quote basket size as small as possible, like 3, 4, or 5. And so, really simple rule of thumb: if you're talking about, as Helene says, 85%, I would say at least 4 out of every 5 women in this town face this challenge. 4 out of every 5. And you might have a colleague who said, no, but it's 85, not 4 out of 5 isn't quite accurate. Doesn't matter. More than 4 out of 5 is true. And what you lose in that tiny level of precision, you massively gain in someone's brain being able to picture 5 of their friends and 4 out of the 5 of them having to deal with a thing. So that's my rule of thumb, for instance, for how you translate percentages. There's a couple of tricks for how, if it's a really big number, you can kind of solve challenges around that. But actually, once you get the hang of it, it's really, really very doable. It's just a mindset. I mean, it really helps that Shelley's keeping it going with the numbers and that, or her colleague is. But actually, a few of them are hard, and I need to get Ben's help, if I'm really honest. But very many of them, really, you just get the hang of it, and they're much easier than you maybe had been led to believe in terms of how really skillful journalists bring numbers to life. I'm just conscious of time, so let's get people away. I'm just ever so quickly going to get things finished. I hope, Shelley, you can see just how helpful people are finding that. So if you find 5 minutes today, everybody, please do just jot down your ideas and potentially chat with a colleague or with your team about what you could take from today. It's the things you do that raise more money, not just whether or not Shelley and I sort of hopefully made an interesting presentation today. Like I said, this won't be for all of you, including for geographical reasons or budget reasons, but if it helped you at all and you want to go deeper, these masterclasses are coming up in 24th of June, and then the one on, I think it's 10th of July. Do act now if you want to get the cheaper price. I'll send an email out with that as well. If nothing else, you want to get more of this kind of content for free, then Fundraising Bright Spots is the name of the podcast. And we just about finished on time. We will see you again in September. One last favour to ask is, if Shelley and I worked really hard to put this together, if at all it was helpful to you, then the one favour I would ask of you is if you just mention it on LinkedIn, also in particular, and just kind of anything you took from it or the fact it was helpful. It just helps spread the word and cause more people to be on the lookout for these free breakfast clubs or the podcast or whatever in future. So thank you to I know some of you are so wonderful in helping me out in that way, and I always massively appreciate it. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for making time to come and be part of it and all the lovely solidarity and community in the club. And lastly, a massive thank you to my colleague Katie, but especially Shelley for working so hard to put together this all entirely on top of your day job. I really appreciate both the wisdom and the ideas, and also the generosity to come and share and help lots of other good causes. So thank you, Shelley.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All of your team. I will get you away. Thank you. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.